Get down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Get down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Get down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Who's down with D&D?
This whole party.
Get down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Get down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
I'm down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Who's down with D&D?
This whole party.
Hello and welcome again to Down with D&D. I am Shawn Merwin, and I am here with our co-host, the man of the hour, the tower of proverbial power, Teos Abadia.
Woo!
He is.
I'm always afraid I'll blow the levels when I do that. But hello, my friend Shawn. Hello, world. How is everyone doing today?
We are ready to talk D&D on this cool November day. Well, at least cool where I am. Probably if you're like in Australia, it's 90 degrees, but we'll just say it's cool in every sense of that word. And we will get started with some news. If you are listening on the day this drops, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything should be out by now. And reviews have already started to come out from some pre-reviewers, including our friend NewbieDM. And what did he have to say, Teos?
Yeah, he seemed to like it. He reviewed three things: Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and there's a lot of lore in there. It very much feels like a Xanathar-style book, as we've seen from all those previews. So he showed off some neat pictures, some cool lore, like the Demonomicon, I can say it, of Igwilf. He also gave a Twitter review of the new Exploration DM screen that we covered a few episodes back. And what's really interesting is it has a ton of these exploration tables that you need for crossing the wilderness, but does not actually pull together the rules for how to use those tables. And since those rules are scattered across the player's handbook and DM's guide, and I would argue Tomb of Annihilation, it's kind of like, you kind of need a crib sheet in addition to your DM screen, which was a thing that I was kind of like, that was an opportunity they could have had there for like here's your list of 1, 2, 3, 4, what to do.
Yeah.
He also showed off the Great Talmudic card game that we talked about.
Okay.
Before.
Yeah. Excellent. So if you're not following NewbieDM on Twitter, you can do that to get all of his great takes and great reviews. And
if
there's a review in Spanish?
Oh. Yeah, Enrique could have covered in Spanish, but he chickened out.
Yeah.
Mario Ortegon did the work for him. He's known on Twitter as Elwarius and also on Twitch. It's ELWARIUS. And Mario covered these products in Spanish. So that's awesome. Check that out. Twitch.
Okay. There was a big drop of not just Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, but also Sage Advice and Errata that had a few people talking about rules in general. And by talking, I mean complaining, grumbling.
Yeah.
But that seems to be the way things work. If you find any exploit in the game and you take advantage of that exploit, you cannot be surprised when the errata comes out or when Sage Advice comes out that takes that exploit and makes it no longer an exploit. So Sage Advice version 2.6 talked about Divine Smite.
Yeah, that one's kind of interesting, right? Because the basic thing is that you cannot use Divine Smite as a paladin when you hit with an unarmed strike.
Okay. And
then it goes and says that it's totally fine rules-wise, balance-wise, if you want to rule otherwise as a DM. And so there's some grumblings and from both players and designers as well. Sort of like, well, why are you bothering with this? Like, why did you spend your time on this delineation when it's not a balance issue? It's not something that you're just sort of semantically addressing this, right?
Right. I mean, unless you're a monk paladin, I'm not sure what you're doing smiting an arm strike.
I think that's the idea, is you're a monk paladin and technically you can't divine smite, and it's like, well, I don't know. Okay. Yeah. But now we know.
Well, I mean, divine smite's powerful enough as it is. You don't need any cheese on top of that big bit of fromage.
Well, what I would say is technically you could build a monk that is not overpowered, where divine smite can sort of help you every now and then bring a little more oomph to it. Sure. But then your DM's going to by default say no unless you convince them otherwise.
Yep. And
there aren't any monk paladin crazy builds that I've seen. So
true.
it's not a balance thing.
Right. By taking levels of monk, you are diluting the number of smites you can do a day as a paladin, basically.
Right.
All right. So, and what's this animate dead ruling?
Yeah, so this is another one that was clarified a while back, and for some reason there's this desire to really, really clarify it. It's more semantics, which before it said casting animate dead. The question was sort of like, can I kill a zombie, then cast animate dead and raise it? And the answer was no, because that is it's not the corpse of a humanoid. It's the remains of an undead. So its type is wrong. It's not humanoid type, so you can't do it.
Yeah.
But if it's a pile of bones, it works and becomes a skeleton. So this is the clarification. So I guess if you want to chop up that zombie or skeleton into a bunch of remnants, then it will become a skeleton and it works just fine. And
yeah.
Why did we need any of this conversation? I'm not sure, but we've had it, and here we are.
Yeah, maybe there is a reason, and we're just not keen enough to ferret out what that might be. And then there was
2.5 to 2.6 was really those things.
Okay. And then there was errata for the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, which have two very popular cantrips, Booming Blade and Green Flame Blade, along with Lightning Lore and Sword Burst. And they've been adjusted to change the range from what was listed to self, which is a distinction that then leads to a lot of different small but significant changes.
Yeah, I think if you're a designer, it's worth knowing that there's this new terminology, right? Self and then X foot radius in the parentheses. So it's worth acquainting yourself with that. If you create powers or features, that's now a thing that you can think of using. On one hand, these spells are now clear. They're a little, I think the first time anybody reads Booming Blade or Green Flame Blade, it's kind of confusing as to exactly what's happening. So there's some better clarity here, but it seems the purpose of the change is to pause a number of interactions or prevent a number of interactions that were previously working with it, right?
Mm-hmm. Such as metamagic, where if you have a single target, then you can twin that spell and cast it on two different people, or distance it and make the range further. So now, since the spell is being cast on yourself, you can no longer twin or distance those spells, which makes sense, I think. And the Warcaster feat, where you can use a reaction to use your cantrip as an opportunity attack, will work for both of them. But with Green Flame Blade, you can't attack a second creature with that cantrip as an opportunity attack.
Yeah, and before it sort of felt like, based on the wording, you had to attack a second creature, and now it's very clear that you can choose to attack a second creature, including so that the opportunity attack will work, and Warcaster will work.
Yep. All right. What about the smell sniper?
I want that beat. Spell Sniper no longer works with the blade spells. It used to allow you to use a reach weapon, so that you could kind of increase the distance of your range, but now it's really self. You can't do that. So Spell Sniper does not work. You have to use a normal weapon, not a reach weapon. Yep. And similarly, the Shadow Blade spell, this required a material. Now the spells Booming Blade and Green Flame Blade require a material component, which is a weapon worth a silver piece or more. Okay. That means that Shadow Blade, because it just creates it out of shadow and has no actual worth, will not work with it. Okay. So you can't stack the damage of Shadow Blade on top of your other spells. This is something that Arcane Trickster Rogues and others would use. Probably similarly, we would say that the Soul Knife's Psychic Blades, if you're using that on Earth Arcana, that would not work because it also has no value.
Right.
But Warlock Pact of the Blade, which has monetary value because it says so in the description, that would still work.
Okay. Whew. Oh, yeah, that's and that was just a very quick skim of those issues. So if you want to see everything in detail, There is a blog by ThinkDM. If you go to thinkdm.org, you can see all of this detailed in a little deeper dive.
Yeah, and he loves math. He really loves to break apart how things work and to examine how errata change. So it's a great blog to look at when these kinds of changes come across. Mm-hmm. He's probably broken it down for you.
And while errata was being thrown around, what the heck? Let's look at Eberron rising from the last war errata.
Yeah, a lot of this seems to be motivated by Tasha's, because Tasha's adds the artificer sort of into the core of the game instead of being in the Eberron book.
Yep.
And there's a lot there, many different fixes and adjustments worth looking at to see whether they impact your game. A changeling cannot choose charisma as its other ability score increase. Mm-hmm. The Warforged integrated protection no longer incorporates shields. Half-Elf's magical detection feature uses wisdom, not int. And then they have a bunch of changes to the artificer. Do you want me to review these?
Sure, because I want to know, because I have an artificer in one of my games.
So they changed the stat blocks for both the Steel Defender and the Homunculus, which are two of the, depending on the options, which type of artificer you are, which subclass you will then gain these. And I like this design a lot. They have scaled now things like hit points, saves, attacks, and other features of the artificer are scaled based on your proficiency bonus.
Okay.
And this is a pretty neat change versus being, say, your ability score or being a static value, or even a tier, because what it means is if you're multi-classing, you would be worse at this, right? Your Steel Defender or Homunculus would be worse. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit of a control on multi-classing, but it's also a very elegant system. That's a number that's on your character sheet, the proficiency bonus. So I like it. I wish that Druid Wild Shaping kind of was based on a stat block that modified based on proficiency bonus. So I think we'll see more and more proficiency bonus being used. Yeah. But that's important to know. If you use these subclasses, those creatures have changed significantly, companions. What I found completely amazing is they didn't tone down the Eldritch Cannon.
Yeah.
Because that thing at low levels.
So I have an artificer in my Acquisitions Incorporated campaign, and the first thing I noticed was, wow, this Eldritch Cannon giving these temporary hit points every round. Boy, that's really powerful. So I discussed it with the player, and he was like, well, at high levels, it gives you the exact same number of hit points. So it's not going to be that powerful at higher levels. But I'm like, yeah, but at low levels, I'm throwing the CR of the encounters that I'm throwing at them are much higher than they normally would be, and it's not even affecting them at all.
Yeah. There are a few times that I would say the words horrible design. Mm-hmm. This is one where I would. The Eldritch Cannon is really quite bad design. And I'm not trying to, we all make mistakes. I'm not being, I'm not trying to lambast someone, but this came out badly. In retrospect, I think we should look at the Eldritch Cannon. It's just really a bad idea. Those temporary hit points, and for folks who don't know, the thing is it has a radius, but you can use it outside of combat. So you can start every combat with temporary hit points that really aren't that different than if you took that Inspired Leader feat.
Right.
So it's almost like a free feat.
Yep.
In fact, I play in a campaign with an artificer that has this, and I took Inspired Leader, and I never get to use it because of this thing.
Right.
Right.
Because since you can use it every round.
Yeah.
You just assume that, well, I'm going to keep rolling until I get the highest number possible.
Exactly.
So you go into every combat situation with the highest number, which is usually like 11, 10, 11, 12 in that area.
And at low levels, that's an unbelievable cushion of hit points, right? It is huge. Right. And then it's not just that you came into the combat with that temporary shield, you're then regenerating it. And if you try to tone it down by saying, well, is he within 10 feet or is she within 10 feet? You are now paralyzing gameplay every round to figure out who does or doesn't get this buff.
Right.
Oh, I dislike the Eldritch Cannon.
And it's a minor action. So every round, the artificer really doesn't lose much. Yeah. Saying, okay, I'll just shoot off that cannon again. Oh, you were, first level, you had 10 hit points to start. You had 21 hit points going in. Oh, you lost 7 of your temporary hit points. Well, let me just shoot it off again. Oh, I rolled well. Now you're back up. So it's. Yeah.
And then even if we don't choose the temporary hit point option, the attack options are pretty powerful, like kind of surprisingly powerful. And there's a lot of ambiguity as to exactly what space this thing occupies, how it can be carried around, how it can be attacked or not, and all of which just facilitates what I'd call ruinous play. So I'm really sad that of all the things that got Errata into here, they didn't touch the Eldritch Cannon, because I think that really needs some filing down.
Yep. When I got my copy of Tasha's, seeing that it was going to have the Artificer in it, that was the first thing I looked at. What did they do with the Eldritch Cannon for the Artificer? And it was nothing. And I may have said a word that I'm not going to say on the air here.
And this was the time, right? This is the moment. That reprint would have been just beautiful. We all could have dealt with the fact that the Eberron book was a little bit out of whack, but this would have fixed it instead. And now, what do you do?
Yep. Well, speaking of Eberron, Keith Baker has a new product up on the DMs Guild that shot immediately to the #1 bestseller on the thing, not surprisingly, pushing out his former #1 product down to #2.
Man,
so
feel bad for Keith.
Why do you feel bad for Keith?
Well, that he had to go down a spot.
Oh, that his one product had to go down because the other one became a #1 bestseller.
I mean, I feel good for him for the one that is at #1. But...
Okay, that's good. Well, Eberron Confidential is the name of that product, and it is only $4.95 on the DMs Guild. It is a product that has 54 character secrets plus tips on how to use them. And what this does is it gives you hooks for the DM to explore, mechanical benefits for the characters like bonus proficiencies, as well as role-playing potential that like you have not seen in many products. This reminds me a bit of the secrets part of Rime of the Frost Maiden, but really done well.
Yeah, these are cool. They have a real sort of DM's eye for how they're put together, so that they're evocative for both player and DM.
Yep.
And the ideas on how to use them are really well done.
Yeah, that's equally important, how to use them, not just here they are. So that is available for you on the DMs Guild presently. And speaking of DMs Guild, The Last Stand at Copper Canyon is an Oracle of War salvage mission by Stacey Allan, who does layout for the Oracle of War adventures, and
worked on Rime of the Frost Maiden as an author.
That's true. And incredible designer, incredible artist, layout person, all around. She's an entire team all by herself.
Yeah, her husband's a slacker though.
Yeah, her husband doesn't do much. But anyway. So this salvage mission is available, like all salvage missions, on the DMs Guild for the Oracle.
Sorry, I just have to stop and laugh for the people who may not know that she's married to Will Doyle.
Yeah.
It's important to say. We love Will. We love Stacey.
I was just going to keep that a secret.
I know you were.
So, sinister forces hunt for salvagers, dragging captives to their scrapyard lair, but Copper Canyon hums with strange and unpredictable magic. Can you defeat the evil which festers at its heart and escape its rusty confines unscathed? So,
awesome.
If you are doing salvage missions, check that one out, because as you will see even just by the cover, it is an incredibly well done adventure.
Yeah, I'm excited to get this. It's on my wish list, and as soon as I get a few more things, I'll pick them all up. And
there you go. Another DMs Guild release recently is Dunwood by Joe Raso. Teos and I met Joe at Winter Fantasy last year. I've met him at some other cons, and he released this source book on the Dunwood region for the Forgotten Realms, one of my favorite regions of the realms. And so there is 9 adventures, encounter tables, a sort of gazetteer of the surrounding lands, art, maps, layout, so much more on this. It's Dunwood.
Yeah, I have this. It's beautiful. I really, really like this. This is really well worth the price. And Joe's a wonderful guy, super creative, likes employing good people, wants to increasingly create products. So this is a great one to support.
Yep.
Check out Dunwood.
We have a new blog post up by DM David. This one I particularly enjoyed. He gives a bunch of sort of one-trick builds builds where you could have a super high AC or move at an incredible distance in a round, or you could do a Nova attack where you just use all your resources on that one attack. And so he describes sort of how to do it, but he also asks this very important question: should you do this?
Right.
And for me, the answer is often no.
What?
No, you shouldn't. Not if you want everyone at the table to have fun. And it's different. Like being able to move really fast. That's cool because you can do cool things with that. No one is saying, "Oh, you just ruined my game because you can move 120 feet in a round."
Right.
Or healing. Healing is a thing that is often very important. And as long as it's not ridiculous, being able to take a character or multiple characters and take them from single digit hit points up, that's good. That's working as a team. Some of them get a little ridiculous though. Like the AC one.
Oh God, I hate
the AC one is the worst for me because it's no fun for you as the DM, because all it's doing is making you avoid hitting this character. And what I usually do when I have a character like this is I'll have the monsters attack them once, and when I see how ridiculously high, they just go attack someone else. And unless they're a sticky character, unless they have something that attacking someone else has a penalty, all it's doing is sort of bragging rights. It seems, which just it's not fun for anyone else at the table, really.
I have a number of friends who use high AC builds, and it saddens me when the DM at a convention will say, "Oh, all right, I hit you with that shield." Yeah, they just cast shield, and no, it didn't hit either. And it's just like only a 20 will hit this thing, right? And it's just, it's so sad for the DM. I feel so bad. And the thing is, like, it wouldn't have mattered if they had an AC 5 points lower. Like, everybody would be fine. There's no reason for all these extra AC points. It's just.
It's just a numbers game. It's just to see how high you can get a number. And in a game that's supposed to be both narrative and game, it just doesn't help the narrative side at all.
And social, right? I mean, and social includes the dungeon master. So
yeah.
But yeah, it was a very fun post to read.
Yeah, sure. it was it's very interesting, especially for people who are into rules and how the rules interact. Just describing how to get these high numbers was interesting. GaryCon has already announced that its 2021 convention will be Ethereal. So no in-person GaryCon March 25th through 28th, but they will have an online convention, as most conventions have in the last year or so, and will continue for the foreseeable future. And
I think I was going to say something dark about hopefully prior to our lives expending, but I'm not going to get that dark on this show.
Well, I think we are a beacon of light amongst the dark. Even saying that,
I say that to my kids all the time.
Yeah. And last but not least, Teos, you wanted to talk about the Reddit thread on the cost of RPG books in other countries. Yeah,
Albert Soup, fun Twitch show, shared this Reddit post, and someone in Bosnia-Herzegovina had said, "Hey, I live in a country in which this D&D book costs 1/5 of the average monthly salary. Today, my wife surprised me. She was secretly saving up for the past 6 months."
Yeah.
And it led to a couple of things. One is some good discussion and awareness of just how different the prices are relative to the dollar in other countries, and to the dollar cost of our books in the country of the US. And also how nice some gamers are, because a number of people began sending books to people for whom the situation was this way.
Right.
Which was very nice to see gamers stepping forward and giving other people, sending them books, and absorbing those costs. But it's something that I think it's important to highlight as an issue, because as we see RPG companies, whether it's D&D or any others, try to go global, that works really well in some places like Europe and Asia. It does not work well in parts of Asia, in almost all of South America, and a number of other countries because of the very different cost of things. And I had someone reach out to me recently and say, hey, I really, you talk about Shadow the Demon Lord. I really want to get it. How do I get it at an affordable rate? I'm in Brazil. And there wasn't a great answer, right? There's a distributor that can get some things, but not all things. And so unless a distributor has a way to get that book, but reprice it at the local price level, it won't work, right? You can't just say, hey, $60 book, that is what you have to save 6 months up to buy, right? It doesn't really work as a wide growth strategy. So I think it's something we'll have to tackle over time for all RPGs.
Yep, it's true. If it is going to become a truly worldwide phenomenon, it needs to be able to get to the world in a way that is reasonable, affordable, and you would hope that PDFs would help with that. But still, there is a discrepancy that's hard to overcome.
Yeah, and in fact, the conversation I had with the nice person in Brazil, they were actually looking for the PDF because the PDF was itself superbly expensive compared to the local cost. And I've had the same problem. I've talked about this before, where I'd like to get Spanish copies of all the books. The only distributor is in Spain, and the price in euros, even to the US, is high.
Right.
And the cost of shipping is more than the cost of the book. And that means it costs about, $110 to get a player's handbook in the US in Spanish. Now, when you translate that $110 to the same cost applies to somebody in Central America and South America, nobody can afford physical copies, or almost nobody can afford physical copies of those books because they're coming from Spain.
Yep. So that would be our news segment, and we are about to move on to our main topic, which is our continuing dive into Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden. We have finally trekked through the 10 towns, all 10 of them, and made it to Chapter 2, where we are going to look at the quests, the sandbox-style quests that are set up in Chapter 2.
Oh, I thought we were talking about avalanches.
Yeah. We are going to go through Teos's math because of the errata.
Do the errata. That's what they should do. Just personally to drive me crazy is errata, avalanches.
He now needs to do his geometric look at avalanches. All right, so Chapter 2 is organized around these quest locations spread around Icewind Dale. They tend to have self-contained plots, not necessarily tied to any of the greater threats of the Everlasting Rime, the Duergar, or any of those other sort of main storylines that run through this adventure. So, did you have any thoughts overall on Chapter 2 to get things started?
As a reader, when I remember what it was like to start reading this was a surprise because Chapter 1 was so sandboxy. I thought Chapter 2, here's where we're going to get into the Rime.
Yep.
And that is not the case. So if you're a DM, it pays to set the expectations from the beginning, or to do, like we talked about in the last episode, if you change things around so you have a stronger narrative, you will want to again find ways to do that here. And in the last episode, we talked about some ways that you could bring a stronger narrative that extends into Chapter 2. You'll want to do that because this is kind of like Chapter 1, except instead of going from town to town, you're going to these other locations. But it can feel like just sort of more of the same, I think.
Yeah.
Even though the locations themselves are great.
I was exactly the same way. I finished Chapter 1 and I thought, okay, that's a cool level 1 to 3, get up to level 4 with this sort of build your own plot thing. And here, Chapter 2, let's get into the meat of the adventure. And if anything, it was more sandboxy than Chapter 1, which was hard to do because that was pretty darn sandboxy. So it starts as you like to see, at least I like to see, it starts with a quick overview, and then it tells you how to run the chapter. And this is helpful especially in this sort of sandbox method of adventure design, you want to give the DM some tips for how to run it best. And the first thing that it gives you is character advancement. Like it did previously, it told you, after the first little quest, go up to level 2, and then after 2 or more, then go up again. This sort of does the same thing. It gives you 3 bullet points. Now, see what's interesting about this. In this chapter, you decide how quickly to advance the characters. Treat the following as recommendations. 1, the characters gain a level after spending 2 or 3 game sessions exploring Icewind Dale. Okay. 2, second bullet point. The characters gain a level for neutralizing the threats in 2 or 3 of the dangerous locations described in the chapter. And third bullet point, the characters gain a level if they accomplish an extraordinary feat, such as ending the feud between the Goliath clans or surviving a close encounter with Arviaturus, the White Worm. And I'm thinking, wait, if you do all of these things, you're basically going to level after one side
two,
quest. Right,
2 locations that you could level everything. Yeah.
Right, because each of the threats is going to maybe take a game session or 2. And then while you're doing those threats, you may accomplish the extraordinary feat. So I think what this is saying is sort of choose one of these methods and go with that, unless it's taking too long, and then go with one of the other ones. But if you do all of those things, you're going to be gaining levels probably too quickly. So just keep that in mind. And it also, there is this sort of inherent bias of what a game session is that we need to get away from, especially in a time where we're playing online or playing by mail or playing differently than we have been able to. Because for me, a game session might be 45 minutes, and for you, a game session might be 8 hours. So when you use a term like game session, you need to make it clear what that means.
Yeah, 4-hour sessions or something, if that's your expectation. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so after this, the characters should reach 7th level, and then they can move on. But move on to what? One might ask.
And that's where, that was another point of confusion when I first read this. It says once the characters reach 7th level, they should no longer gain levels by exploring locations or surviving random encounters in this chapter. Instead, direct them to the locations described in chapters 5 through 7, which makes me go, what happened to chapters 3 and 4?
Right, we're in chapter 2.
So you have to read chapter 3 to 4 to sort of find out what's coming, because it won't tell you here.
Right.
And it's probably worth saying that chapter 3 to 4 is where actually the adventure takes off with a more linear plot, though it isn't super obvious. And let's just go ahead and say chapter 3 is the Dwergar fortress called Sunlight. Chapter 4 is a dragon attacking the 10 towns.
Right.
And these are sequential. So once 3 comes up, 4 is very close on its heels, and in fact presents you with a choice of whether to finish off 3 or go to 4. And then chapter 4 will actually lead you to 5th, and you have to be 7th level when that happens. So it is one of those things you have to kind of balance as a DM. You have to keep in your mind, sort of in a corner of your brain, that whenever I engage 3, then I'm on to my more linear plot.
Right.
But I shouldn't do that until I'm 7th level. And yet there are some things that could take you to chapter 3 in the Dwergar Fortress. You have to be careful of those and not trigger that too early, because then it all gets triggered.
Right. Yeah, it is definitely, there are some disconnects between what I think the adventure assumes, but then what the adventure demands later.
Yeah.
So we definitely have to be aware of those, stay aware of those.
Yeah, and that's where I would keep it, whenever you sort of want to not go to the Dwergar Fortress earlier than 6th level, but probably 7th, and so you want to start throwing hints around the 6th level so that it'll happen correctly.
Right.
I And maybe let's talk about what. So coming back to chapter 2, where we are, there are 13 sort of quests or locations, and you are given 2 methods by which to sort of reach them. One of them is a system called Tall Tales and 10 Towns, and the other is that you can be moving across the landscape and encounter them, which is strange given how big and open it is.
I like the way that it presents. You can either get your characters into the quest as rumors, or you can get them in as sort of a more plot hook, in-depth sort of thing. You just have to be careful about the player type that you have. Some players, when they hear a rumor, like I'm just going to pick one randomly. Frost giants ruled this land long ago. Their leader, the Jarls, would meet atop a hill to the west to settle disputes. Their thrones still rest on that hill. Now that leads them, that some players are going to hear that and go, okay, let's go to that hill. And they won't think twice about it. And in 10 seconds, you are now on that hill. Some are going to say, well, what does the hill look like? What did the thrones look like? What did the frost giants do? All of those things are going to come up. And then you are going to now have to either A, read ahead and be able to answer those questions, or B, just say nobody knows.
Right. Yeah. And I think some of these, if some of the players that I run, I think would hear these and go, okay, great. What else can you tell me about? You've got some random thing about goblin scavengers moving around wagons. What am I going to go hunt them? No. So what, but no, actually you're supposed to, and I don't think these are often evocative enough, and maybe that's not the right way to say it, but it doesn't directly lead characters to going on. And it's interesting because you talked about last time about how Chris Perkins had said some of the inspiration for how they designed this was how well the quest board worked in the Essentials box set. But that quest board, that was the beauty of it, is the quest board has this, an NPC that sort of doesn't want to see you, just chucks these small notes, and that's all you're getting.
Right.
But that information that's on those quests is really all you need to go. And that this is the mechanism. It's a very beautiful, efficient, and elegant thing that you're going to this quest board, you're finding what you need to know to go off and do that. Here, this is one of many things that might be said in an evening in a tavern or as you're shopping in town. And that gives it less weight and less clarity. And as you said, many players will then say, tell me about this hill. Oh, hold on. I got to page through the book. And what should you know? What should you not? I don't like the level of meat here.
Right. Especially since each of these quests are fairly meaty in and of themselves, or can be. And so this is just one more reason why you as the DM may want to read through ahead of time and decide the path, or decide one of a restricted number of paths that you are going to put in front of the characters, so you know what's going on. So it's not just a random roll of the dice gives you this rumor, which then gives you a bunch of questions that the characters are now going to have to wait for you to read through that to answer those questions.
Yeah, and I like, so we should say there are these quests that you can directly give your characters, and I think those work. Those are obviously that truly is, some NPC saying to you, hey, perform this service for me. Sometimes I'll pay you, or there's a threat, will you be heroes and do this? And those work well at doing that, but it's sort of an interesting intersection with these tall tales. And what I wonder, as a DM, if you're willing to put in the work, you can actually think through, and this is almost what this, I think there's one or two approaches, right? One is the sandbox style. You shout out some rumors, you see if they bite. If not, you randomly choose a quest, throw it at them, and off they go, and they just and you just see where that all ends up. And when they're getting to 7th level, you go to the next chapter. I think if you want to try to create a better narrative, you're then forced to go through all these and sort of think through which ones are you going to pick and why. And if they happen to be in similar locations on the map, you can look at this big map and say, well, if I'm going to take them to, the Cave of the Berserkers, they might pass the Lost Spire on the way there, and they're near where the Goliaths live. So that can be a chain of things that I do. And maybe I add some rumors about that, so that while they're at the Cave of the Berserkers, they think, well, I'll also go check out where the Goliaths live, right? But it almost puts that work on you, rather than elegantly handling it itself.
Yep. So there are, as Teos said, several quests. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I only see 12.
Oh, maybe I miscounted.
Yeah. Well, it's strange because there are 11 rumors, but according to this, there are 12 quests.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think the last rumor handles two of the quests. But it's sort of, it's presented in a strange way, because first you get this table of rumors, and each rumor is maybe 3 or 4 sentences at most. Then they give the same thing, but in quest form, where it's 2 or 3 paragraphs describing who gives the quest, what they say about the quest, what they will pay, etc. And then after that, they don't even give you the full quest yet. Now they give you random wilderness encounters and how to run them.
And we should also say these quests and Tall Tales do not cover all the locations. True. There are a few locations that are unlocked only while you either meet certain monsters or go to other locations. Then it, points you to those.
Right. So amidst this sort of chaotic structure of how do we even get to these quests and where are they in the book, before you get to the final version, here, let's have some random wilderness encounters. So for me, that was one randomness too far.
Mm-hmm.
And I will admit that I am a very structured person. I like linear adventures. I like sculpted experiences. As both a DM and a player, that's my preference. So this wilderness encounter section was one step too far for me, because it tells you, roll a d8 for when it happens. Okay, well, what if I'm not traveling at night, or what if I decide to travel at night but rest during the day? It was just this sort of strange way to present, for me, a strange way to present these.
For me, it was okay, because they do say you can choose when to have it show up, right? They do tell you that, and one or 2 per game session. We got the game session again, but
right.
Have them show up every now and then. So I'm okay with this, but if you want to roll, then hey, every 24 hours, roll a d8, and then you do this table where it says when the encounter happens, and it can be nothing or 2 of them. To me, I would add a little different guidance here, in that in general, the point of random encounters is to do a variety of things, and I think those are important. We talked about this in the exploration episodes we did, but you want to paint the picture of the world, make the world seem more complex, make travel seem challenging. There should be a purpose to wilderness encounters in many ways, and so it's not just about its periodicity, right? It's more on that.
Yeah, it seems odd to me too that you would do sort of a random encounter for chapter 1, then a different random encounter for chapter 2, and I'm just waiting to see if there's random encounters worked into the rest of the book. If I do have random encounters presented to me in an adventure, I just want it at the beginning or at the end, and then tell me for the whole book. I don't need individual chapters or individual sections saying, okay, here are the random encounters for this thing. And again, I completely admit that I am not a fan of random, wilderness sort of encounters.
I'm not either. Actually, I'm okay with having different tables. And the reason for that is that I do like it so two things. One is when they scale by level.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't need 4 goblins to be a random encounter when I'm in a later chapter, but in an early chapter, that's great. And that it can feel a little more like it's suited to the environment. And I'll tell you what I really like about these wilderness encounters is this 2 die system.
Yep.
That's very clever. This is really cool. Merrick Blackman wrote a blog post where he talked about the construction of random encounter tables. Mm-hmm. And it was right around the time I was reading about this. And this is, right in that kind of concept of like build into your table what the world should be like. And this uses 2 dice. You roll 2d20 of different colors when you're rolling on the random wilderness encounter table. The first d20 is the encounter die that tells you what it is, and the second is the blizzard die. Mm-hmm. So the encounter die, if I roll a 15, okay, well, that's Chewinga. And it tells me the difficulty, which I also appreciate, so that's easy. Then I look at my other d20, and if that number was higher than the encounter die roll, so higher than 15, this takes place during a blizzard. And what it allows the designer to do is to create this table such that some things will never happen never happen in a blizzard, and others almost always happen in a blizzard.
Mm-hmm. I thought that was very clever. The thing I noticed, though, I don't want to be the downer or the person that says, all of the things I see wrong. I thought that was great, and I'm like, cool. So every encounter, especially the lower ones, which will always almost happen in a blizzard, will tell me if not in a blizzard this, if in a blizzard this, and very few of them did. It just becomes either you as the DM have to figure out what it means to be in a blizzard.
That takes us back to these whole blizzard avalanche type things that I don't know that those were the best design for allowing for a multitude of different stories to be told. Right. Unless they had said, here is what a default blizzard or avalanche is, play with it, which is really what you should do, because it's too on off as an environmental situation.
Yeah. So what that means is on the table, if the things that are 1, 2, or 3 are pretty much guaranteed to have a blizzard happening, whereas things up in the 18, 19, and 20 are probably never going to have a blizzard attached to them.
So peritons are 20, so they never are going to be found in a blizzard, and a Yeti is a 1, so it will always be found in a blizzard. Well, okay, unless you roll another 1.
Well, if you roll a 1, it says add 1 to the blizzard die.
Oh, there you go.
So so it's actually if the dice are tied, you add 1 to the blizzard die, so it is a blizzard. So I love that cool mechanic. I just wish that each of the random encounters had made it cool, or a big difference between having it in a blizzard versus not in a blizzard. Some of them do, to their credit. A lot of them don't. We have a cool set, though, of random encounters. Pun not really intended there. Going from very easy to let's just say deadly.
Brutally deadly.
Why don't let's point out some of our favorite of these wilderness encounters, things that we think maybe the DM should put in front of the characters without ever rolling a die.
So one of them we have to start with Arveaturus, the ancient white dragon, which has some very excellent Forgotten Realms lore here. This dragon, she flies around with a rider strapped to her. And if you get a close enough look, you realize this rider is dead. It's the wizard that used to kind of command her, but he died and she actually grew attached. So she acts as if he is still alive. Mm-hmm. And we can meet this. She is at one of the locations that you can later visit. which is a very, I think, neat, though difficult to run encounter. So you don't necessarily want to spoil it now. And what it says here is that she is not really particularly looking to devour the party. But this is one of those things where you wonder whether she's an ancient white dragon, so she's extremely tough. This is CR 20.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting feature to have, right? And this is more of a visual in this place, but WizKids did make this enormous mini of her, so and later she shows up, so it's interesting. I think it's a fun thing to show your players and then have her fly off.
Yeah, this is one of those things where you do want to give a tease for this, since later you probably will be presenting this white worm as something to deal with later. But I do love the fact that the rider's strapped into a saddle, dead on her back, and she talks to him.
Yeah, and a couple of folks have, Power Score and I think NewbieDM have looked into the lore of her story and of the wizard on it. So you can look that up if you want, and it's some fun reads there.
Another of these wilderness encounters are awakened beasts. And in this case, it's just an awakened beast, so it's a regular native animal with intelligence of 10 and the ability to speak Common and Druidic. And it just sort of gives you a table on what that creature might be, and then sort of do with it what you will. It's smart enough to stay out of the character's way. So it's just another way to introduce this concept of these frost druids or other types of druids, even in the Dale, awakening beasts to use as scouts, as allies, as spies. But what I would do is I would kind of turn that whole concept on its head. And people love awakened animals, right? Look at the cute little bunny. It can talk. Make it that, right? Make it this neat little thing that rides around on the druid's back in the party, and they're big friends. And the whole time they're spying on the party for some horrible evil thing. And so that just, it makes it fun for the players while that's happening. And then it makes it fun for you as the DM when you introduce that conflict and you flip that switch, and this sweet little bunny that has been talking to everyone and becomes sort of a mascot now becomes the tool for the party's potential downfall.
Right. Or you could even use it, the druids can be of any alignment that awaken these things. So you could also use it as the get out of jail free card, where the cute little bunny is tied to a good druid who comes to your rescue when you're about to be destroyed by enemies. And so it could be the excuse for how you avoid a TPK when things go really poorly.
Right. But leave that sense of mystery, leave that wild card in your hand that you can play for different purposes and for different reasons down the line.
One thing I like about these encounters is some of them have a lot of depth to them and can actually lead to a big filler. And I like to have that in my back pocket as a DM when I'm looking at the time on the clock and how much I have planned for a gaming session. I might need a bigger thing to fill. Mm-hmm. And the Shardalan Berserkers are one of those. Yep. These, when you defeat these Berserkers who are sort of crazed by the corrupted ice fragments that they have with them, you find a ring on them. And if you take it, it transports you to the cave of these Berserkers. So that's a great way to extend in your time or throw in a surprising element. Yep. And this is not some small place. It has 2 white dragon wormlings. And what's really impressive about this location, and it is one of the locations that name later, it has a special magic and enchantment in this area that within this cave complex, the Berserkers can't be brought down below 1 hit point unless you deal with the magical brazier in area Q5. Mm-hmm. And that requires Dispel Magic or Stone Shape, which you may not have.
Yes.
So there's a lot going on there, which can be a lot of fun, can be tough, but requires this sort of kids' gloves DM approach to figuring out how to telegraph this properly so they're not just surrounded by Berserkers that think they can take down Or they may, one thing that happens, you attack these short-down berserkers you encounter in the wilderness. You're still very hurt. You put on this ring, you teleport to this cave, and you can't kill the things there, and you're surrounded, and you TPK out.
Yeah, that it becomes rough. So what I would, if and when I run this, I'm going to change that. So when they put the ring on but are not attuned to it, only they go there. But when they take it off, they return to where they were.
You can also have it. Go ahead.
Then when they become attuned to it and they put it on, everyone within 100 feet goes. So that cool. It gives a cool, quick look, and then you have something later that they might want to try. The players might want to try. That's
another option is putting it on. You start to like sense it and see that cave, but you can take it off and then it goes away. So you kind of get that feeling of something, a little bit of a warning. We might go somewhere.
Yep. Especially if they don't have the means to actually defeat the creatures in the cave. You need to give them an out.
How about these insane chewingas?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, what did you think of the chewingas? I think we're past the point now in D&D of things like sane and insane. We need to use new terminology.
Yep.
And
I was going to say the same thing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's a neat concept. The concept is these chewingas are nature spirits, right? They're spirits of cold in this case. And so a blizzard would send them into a frenzy. That makes perfect sense. And I love that dichotomy between, or the connection between the spirit and the nature. And if you use that going forward, you can do some cool things with elementals that you meet later in the adventure, whether that are already there or that you put in, where they mimic the nature. In literature, it's called the objective correlative. I just don't like. I'm trying to avoid using sane and bad, all those things.
Yeah.
But it's I like the encounter itself, where this chewinga, if it's not a blizzard, it gives you a berry that heals you and befriends you. If it's a blizzard, the chewinga's in a frenzied state and therefore throws things at you and tries to steal from you, and you can have some fun with that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So then we have. Oh. Yeah, I thought it was fun. I agree with you on the label of insanity or sanity is it's too complicated in today's world, and it carries too many connotations to be used. And so it's better, like you said, to describe it as going into frenzy or being overcome by the blizzard. I think that's neat. I think it's a little hard guidance-wise. I'd like a little more here around what characters can do to interact with them and to pick up on that they're one way or another. Mm-hmm. There isn't much here to say how players can read them or determine this about them. And it would also be strange because you could have met chewingas in various ways so far. And so, yeah, it's almost like we came up with a new thought. Mm-hmm. But as long as you navigate that, I think this is a fun way to shake things up. And if you're a DM that doesn't like, say, cute things, mm-hmm. It is important. And I would say I normally am not super into cute things, but I have seen that throwing in cute things changes it gives you this momentary different feel to your session. Yep. That is awesome for play. Mm-hmm. And so, and usually there's someone at the table, if not several people, that will really enjoy interacting with something that's cute. And it just changes your brain pattern of what you're all doing and the experience you're having. And then you can go back to the whatever it is, the murder or the horror or whatever the other aspects are. It's good to swap that out periodically. And so I like that this exists for that reason.
Yeah. Did you have other encounters that you wanted to highlight?
I mean, Frost Giant riding a mammoth.
Yeah.
So first of all, one of my favorite old-time DDM miniatures is the Frost Giant riding a mammoth. It's unbelievable. And I like that in this and in other encounters, negotiation is possible. They don't always give you the guidance for what to do around that, but it's I like that there's that option. Gnolls coming from Cackling Chasm, that's another one that you can use to trigger a larger encounter behind it. How do you feel about the Goliaths, the Goliath party or the Goliath werebear?
Yeah, I thought it was fine. I think it tells a good story of what's happening in Icewind Dale. And I would go with the more passive, friendly Goliaths, just to give a little bit of role-playing opportunity, as opposed to the ones that are indifferent or going back to the Gnolls, though, I would have rather than rumors or quests, I would have rather had these random encounters actually lead to the bigger quests, because they seem to be a better introduction to what happens at these places than the actual rumors or quests themselves.
Yeah, it especially when you look at how Cackling Chasm, the location, is described, there is a storyline there of how the main Gnoll led them here from other lands, and then this horrible rime takes place, and there is no food, and so they are questioning the leader and actually looking for someone to take down the leader. And so running into this party of Gnolls, they might at first attack you, but then might also make peace with you,
right?
And kind of even want them to follow them or hire them, or there are a lot of opportunities here, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah,
I agree with you. This is a great way to go to that place,
right? Because if you use the rumor, it's like, oh, okay, rumor, there are these Gnolls. All right, let's go fight the Gnolls. But then randomly you run into the Goliaths, who actually might send you on a different quest. So
right.
If you're going to have these threads, then go with the threads. Don't.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I'd say is that the best time to have someone run into something like the Gnolls or the Goliaths that are going to take you to a place is on the way back home.
Yep.
Right. So you accomplish your quest, and on the way back, you don't even need to go home, because hey, look, here's this other quest, and that can take us. It feels more natural, right? We had nothing to do. We're going to go back to town and see what else there's to do. Oh, but wait, now we're interacting with someone who takes us somewhere.
Yep. The Goliaths. I'm sorry. Going back to the Goliaths. Yeah, I like the idea that they're very competitive, and it's sort of their socialization is to let's play a game. Of course, the game usually has to do with punching each other in the head, but I guess that's my family's also a way of greeting each other. So
knock each other off rocks.
I feel quite at home.
Yeah, we'll get into the Goliaths in more detail later, but there is a game called Goat Ball, which and the tale of two clans that misremember how a particular match went, which feels ripped off completely, and this is not necessarily a bad thing, from Avatar: The Last Airbender and the two Earth tribes they meet at one point there.
Yeah.
This is that same kind of storyline, and I think can be very enjoyable, but it's always difficult when you have a group of creatures who kind of their thing is that they don't want to talk with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's always a little hard. And so, yeah, I would say you're right. And go with the ones that want to talk to you more first. And then it can be fun to have that contrast of encountering a group that doesn't want to deal with you. Oh, they're from the other place. We'd heard about those, right?
Yep. Then we have a few sort of standard random encounters. You have the ice troll. Okay, what do you do with the ice troll? You fight the ice troll. You have the kobolds.
Well, can I say that the ice troll? I find it's so standard, and I'd say even kind of lackluster. But ice trolls themselves have this cool thing about their heart.
Oh yeah, yep.
And
you can hear a rumor that you want to eat the ice troll heart, the whole thing, if you find it, because it will give you resistance to cold. Yeah. And
that's what then makes this more interesting, is if you can throw that in there.
Yeah, and then you have the characters hunting ice trolls, because there's a chance that they might be able to gain cold resistance. Yeah, and then there's typical kobold encounter where it can either be a fight or they can parlay with them and help them out. That's cool. The orcs of the Many Arrows tribe.
Yeah, I struggled with this one. I kind of didn't even want to talk about it, but yeah, like what do we? It's like they're trying to address that orcs are not one thing.
Yeah, it's so hard. It's so hard. The history of the game that we're trying to shed, where orcs are just the bad guys, and then we make progress to get them to drop player character traits and make them more positive, and then you come across something like this where it's just these sort of, the orcs want to kill you and eat you.
Yeah, it's like this encounters with an orc war chief who leads a hunting party that includes an orc Eye of Grumsh, 6 orcs, and a half-ogre. Painted in dry blood on the Eye of Grumsh's shield is the symbol of Many Orcs' tribe, a crude skull impaled by 3 arrows. But you can reason with them.
Right. Yeah.
And this is where, if what you want to do is have an encounter that shows orcs as being more than brutal, then that random encounter must show that, right? They are on the edge of a precipice. One of the member has fallen, and they're trying to help that one up. You come across the scene. They look to you. You look at them. It's a sort of, and now we can talk. Right now we can, give us a help. We'll help you. Hey, we have this information, this quest lead, whatever. That's how you breathe some life into it, right? Yeah. Or they're playing a game, competing against one another, and they invite you to join, and things can go poorly or well depending on how that goes. Or it's something different that creates an interaction that isn't just pushing you towards combat.
And what even tweaked me a little more was they used Many Arrows tribe, which was sort of one of the, even in the old lore, one of the places where the orcs were reasonable. And they did go from sort of this stereotypical bad guy persona to more civilized and more peaceful, and it began moving in that direction using that tribe. So to see it step back and use that name was even more disheartening to me.
And I don't know if that was Wizards, if that was specifically R.A. Salvatore, that Salvatore wrote the story of how King Obold and Drizzt sort of, he becomes an analog for Drizzt, but on the orc side, right? They've been murdering all these people, taking over lands, sieging against different human lands. And then Drizzt finds this guy that can be reasoned with. And it's sort of like, oh, I'm the solitary orc, just like Drizzt was the solitary good drow. And these two good singular people can sort of achieve change. It's more intricate than that, but there's a lot of that to it, which is really not how you save the situation to say, one dark drow is good, one orc is good. And then unfortunately what happened is the storyline goes back to a lot of the orcs, again, slaughtering people around them. And I think that's sort of where the current state is historically, is that the Many Arrows are, only in some places have a tenuous alliance. I could be wrong on that, but they did go back and forth.
Right.
And so, and now we're trying to say, well, really, it's that these are varied peoples, and you find a variety inside of varied peoples, and so that we should not make this assumption. But this encounter it doesn't do that, right? It doesn't quite get you there.
Yeah, I love your idea though of having them trying to save one of their own who's fallen, or in some way to let the characters at least have the option in their own minds of a peaceful resolution. But you do need that, because otherwise, with a lot of parties, if you just present these orcs painted in blood, what are they going to do? They're going to roll initiative, and that's as far as the talking is going to go.
Yeah. Place these kinds of foes or creatures in situations that underscore human elements that players can identify with, and when that happens, then we will react that way.
Yep, good call. And the other one I wanted to point out was the Paratons, which are a cool monster. This will almost never happen in a blizzard because they are the last ones on the list. But they, the lore of the Periton is really cool to me because it's so kind of horrifying. Nature's red in tooth and claw. Peritons can only mate if the one of the pair eats a heart of a humanoid, and they this pair are out looking to mate. So look out. And there's a rumor that you can hear elsewhere in the adventure that says, if you see Peritons, bury yourself in the snow and hope they don't find you. So
I love it.
And I mean, they're only CR2 each, so it's not like it's an impossible combat.
Right.
But
Though they fly.
Yep. So I just, Periton has always been sort of one of my favorite D&D type things. So I like that.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's neat. In a Periton encounter, one thing that you could think about, especially because this is supposed to have a sort of horror theme to it at times, is have these Peritons circle you for a while, then seem to go away, then you spot them in the distance, and you just know they're following, and then have a fight.
Yep.
And they're somewhere out there, right? And maybe that could be like almost like a skill challenge to try to evade them because they smell the blood, they're going to come for you, and can you get to a favorable situation to defend against them, and then you run that Periton encounter.
Right.
That'd be beautiful.
Or if you have an encounter with the gnolls or with the kobolds that goes south and turns into a combat, the Peritons can come down and take care of the business at hand with the dead, gnoll, rather than bothering with the humans, and
sure.
the party can watch it happen.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
And realize, okay, that they're out there. So
yeah. Can we just say Snowy Owlbear? I don't know what happened here. We get this art, which a lot of people have commented on, of this sort of cute looking owlbear that's way more fluffy than usual, and it almost looks like it's dragging its butt on the carpet the way my dog does.
Yep.
And we tell him to stop immediately. But all it is a normal owlbear stat block plus a 30-foot swim speed.
Yep.
That's a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
I don't need another stat block that's the same monster with a swim speed. Like, you can just tell me it has a swim speed.
Yeah.
So, but what would be cool is a snowy owlbear that has something cool and new about it. I would have liked that.
Right. Or had a story element to it, not even a mechanical element, although a mechanical element would be preferable to just a regular owlbear. So, yeah.
The last thing I'd say is the Yeti, they're labeled so you can roll to see what kind of Yeti you come up with. Like, maybe it's just normal Yeti or one abominable Yeti or Yeti type. And that's fun because you can tell different stories with that. But they say hard for abominable Yeti. This is CR9. And the Yeti can surprise you and are almost always in a blizzard. And CR9 with surprising could be very painful. So just be aware of that.
Yeah, that's true. So those were the wilderness encounters. There were more, but we didn't call every single one out. But that is a good place to end this session. So we can, next session, get into each of these quests individually. Anything else to say, Teos, before we wrap up?
No, I think that's great. I mean, there's a lot here, super sandboxy, but again, we'll look next time at how we can try to do a little more narrative here.
Mm-hmm. How to tame this wild beast.
Tame the wild beast.
So thank you so much for listening. Thank you to our patrons out there who give us a little bit of money each month to keep the lights on. Thanks to all our listeners. If you like the show, please consider spreading the news on your social media accounts. We appreciate that. If you would like to become a patron, you can go to patreon.com/MMP. Teos, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me at AlphaStream on Twitter and my blog, alphastream.org.
You can find me on Twitter at Sean Merwin, or you can go to the forums at forums.misdirectedmark.com to leave your comments on our show. Down with D&D is a Misdirected Mark production, the media arm of Encoded Designs. So, Mr. Teos, what are we going to do now?
Let's go kill some monsters in a blizzard.
Get down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Get down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Get down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Who's down with D&D?
This whole party.
Down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
You down with D&D?
Yeah, you know me.
I'm down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Who's down with D&D?
This whole party.
But not an avalanche.
No.